Welcome back to Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. I can't believe I'm saying this, but today's guest on Word Balloon, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. That's right, the NBA All-Star, the NBA icon, the important voice that sprang from the mid-'60s and made an impact from his college years in UCLA, hell, his high school years in New York, to his championship runs with the Milwaukee Bucks, giving that franchise its first ever championship, him and Oscar Robertson and the rest of the excellent Bucks. His great years with the Lakers in the 70s and the 80s, and into the career of Magic Johnson. This guy was, exceptional. I don't even have to tell you more about his basketball accomplishments. You probably already know. But the man's been an incredible writer as well. He's the author of 12 books, and I really appreciate his perspective on social issues, but he's also written kids' books. He just released a great book about his time with UCLA head coach John Wooden, not just his basketball playing years at UCLA, but really spanning the rest of Coach Wooden's life. This was a lifelong friendship, and it's a pretty amazing story, Coach Wooden and me. But we're here to talk about two things, mostly about his new fiction that he's been writing about, of all things, Mycroft Holmes, Sherlock Holmes' older brother, a man that's only mentioned a few times in the original Arthur Conan Doyle stories, certainly has gotten more spotlight in some of the newer modern reboots of Sherlock Holmes. I, in particular, love Mark Gatiss' portrayal of Mycroft. He's Holmes as well in Sherlock. I think a really fun character. Well, Kareem takes a different approach, a more steampunk League of Extraordinary Gentlemen sort of approach with Mycroft in a very fun, dashing adventure tale, and it's called Mycroft Holmes and the Apocalypse Handbook. It's drawn by Joshua Cassara, and Kareem does the writing. It's an amazing book. Raymond Obsfeld is Kareem's co-writer, but this is a lot of fun. It collects all 5 issues of the comic book that Titan put out, but it's a graphic novel now. And I'm not kidding. I'm not just pimping this because this is a celebrity writing a comic book. It's good. It's funny. It's great adventure. It's beautiful storytelling. The full package. And that's terrific and a relief. But also, we talk about Kareem's life as a comic book reader. And that's pretty amazing. And, you hear the joy in my voice because I think we all get really excited when we learn that Patrick Stewart, Samuel L. Jackson, Ben Affleck, I'm just rattling off celebrities off the top of my head, who not only know the comic book world, but actually do read the books. Patrick Stewart, a huge Warren Ellis fan, loves Transmetropolitan, wanted to play Spider Jerusalem. Sam Jackson finds out that they, in a nod to him and Marvel, make him Nick Fury in the Ultimates, and he's thrilled. Unlike Eminem, who wasn't so thrilled when J.G. Jones and Mark Miller thought of him as the ideal lead for Wanted. But Kareem is one of us, if I can borrow the phrase from Freaks, the Todd Browning movie from the early 30s. One of us. And you will tell, because there's not too much basketball talk in this conversation with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. It's really about growing up, loving comics. Where did he get them? What were his favorites? Did he meet any of the great comic luminaries, given his own status as an international star? And also I wanted to know, because Kareem has been very vocal, not only about, throughout his life, about some of the social culture debates of the days, going back to the 60s. I mean, this is a guy who stood up, changed his name from Lew Sindor to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, would speak out, I think, at social injustices throughout his life, continues to do so now. He just wrote an excellent essay for The Hollywood Reporter that we talk about briefly, but also I had to know if he was aware of some of the arguments going on in the comics and geek culture today. And I kind of gave him an update. I hope I didn't misrepresent the subjects. I don't think I did. But really wanted to get his point of view on what's going on. And he shared it. So this is delightful and I think informative conversation that goes beyond basketball. And so much fun with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar on today's Word Balloon. Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon listeners. Thank you, League, for your support. And I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate it, especially as I go into New York Comic Con this week. I'll be there. I don't have any panels or anything organized, planned beyond just doing my usual thing of going on the rounds of Artist Alley and talking to people, trying to set up some future talks with folks we haven't had on the show before, but also hopefully getting a chance to run into you and thank you for your particular support for the cause. Thank you very much, League of Word Balloon listeners, through your support through Patreon. If you'd like to subscribe to Word Balloon, you don't have to, but Word Balloon is free. I always try to stress that. It'll always be free. But if you can help me out and you think what you hear on Word Balloon might be worth, I don't know, the price of a comic book each month, you can go to wordballoon.com and click on the Patreon ad there, or go to patreon.com/wordballoon and subscribe to the Word Balloon podcast. I can't thank you enough. Over 250 strong. Thank you for your support, League of Word Balloon listeners. Word Balloon is also brought to you by InStock Trades at instocktrades.com. We mention Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's new book, Mycroft Holmes and the Apocalypse Handbook. They've got it there at 25% off. It's only $12.74. And there's a lot of great Titan publishing product available at good prices from InStockTrades.com. You can get a lot of Tank Girl volumes. Alan Martin's a wonderful book. Not only Alan Martin, but also even Alan Grant did some writing, and some other great writers as well. But you can get Tank Girl books for 25% off. They range in price from $11.21 and as high as $14.96 from InStock Trades. There's also a great collection of Joe Simon and Jack Kirby 1940s and 50s sci-fi stories. Pretty neat stuff. It's the Simon and Kirby science fiction collection. And, it's Joe Simon doing some of the writing, some others as well, but also Jack Kirby, the two of them on the art chores. And it even includes their creation Blue Bolt in the collection. This is 25% off, $37.46. You'll find more great things. There's the Monster Massacre hardcover, another great collection of Golden Age stories. Again, from people like Joe Simon and Jack Kirby, Dave Wilkins among them. It's 25% off, $17.24. Check it out. You're going to find a lot of great books from Titan, including Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's wonderful take on Mycroft Holmes at reduced prices at InStockTrades.com. Take a look today. You'll find great books at great prices. InStockTrades.com. All right, without further ado, I am so pleased to present this conversation with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and I'm really glad that he was willing to share. You know, I feel like we've had him up in the treehouse, and he's kind of sitting with us, cross-legged, and just chewing the fat about the things he loves about not only comic books but comic strips as well. And some other really great. I mean, he runs the gamut of what he liked, and I don't even want to spoil any names. I'll let Kareem do that himself in this wonderful conversation. So here it is now, my talk with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar on Word Balloon. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, welcome to Word Balloon. It's a pleasure to talk to you, and congratulations on some really fun Sherlock Holmes universe adventures.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad you've enjoyed it.
Absolutely. The Apocalypse Handbook. Mycroft Holmes in the Apocalypse Handbook, the graphic novel. Is it fair to say, in terms of, without spoiling, kind of the beginnings of Mycroft's adventures that lead him to where we see him in the Conan Doyle novels?
That's really what I was trying to do. You hit it right on the head. I was trying to give him some backstory. Arthur Conan Doyle only mentions him about 4 or 5 times in all of the original stories. So we really have no idea what made him who he ends up being in those stories. So that left a whole huge area for me to deal with my imagination, and that's how we came up with these ideas about Mycroft.
It's a lot of fun, the graphic novel in particular, because of the steampunk backsetting that you put into it and the real people that populate the story as well. And I've heard you on a couple other interviews, and it sounds like you got intrigued by Mycroft in the same way that I think a lot of us readers did, in terms of, when Sherlock himself says he is the British government, and obviously seems to be smarter than Holmes.
Yeah, he has a different approach on what we would call, genius, but it's very, very formidable and very effective. And he's a troubleshooter for Queen Victoria, and then that's it. That's all we're left with. Where do you go from here?
Well, you take it in some great directions. Were you aware, because obviously you're one of us, and forgive me for even like suggesting that you wouldn't be, but it's always, as I'm sure you know from maybe talking to other people in the geek culture, it's like, oh, it's always so cool that, like, you know, somebody like yourself is also into this stuff. And also I'm wondering, like, what do you think of, like, when they call it the nerd culture or the geek culture? I always have that, like, reflex of, oh, that's almost negative, and, you know, we're more fun than that.
You know, but we were the kids that liked to read. Come on, you know, and comic books were like a guilty pleasure because all the teachers at school wanted us to be reading, you know, Dickens and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Well, the great thing is clearly you were also such an adventure fiction fan of like Robert Louis Stevenson and Jules Verne, and you know that influence is evident in the graphic novel in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, some of these stuff, Ivanhoe, you know, and
Sure.
then the Sunday paper, the Prince Valiant, and you know, Mandrake the Magician.
Yeah.
Yeah, all those. I grew up on all of that stuff.
Did you? I'm always interested because, you know, in these days we've got the specialty comic book stores and stuff. Did you get your comics at the newsstand, the candy store? What was your young experience like with buying comics?
The candy store.
Cool.
Here in my on the main street in my neighborhood, Dykeman Street.
That's fantastic. Did I guess you grew up more in the DC era, or did you read more than just superhero comics?
DC era, you know, with a few, you know, Donald Ducks in there.
Sure.
And, you know, later on, Flash and what was it, Black Hawks and all that.
Oh, yeah.
Stuff.
That's excellent. Yeah. Did you have, like, favorite artists or favorite writers? Were you able to, like, kind of figure out once they started putting the credits on, like, oh, this is the good writer or the good artist?
Well, later on, you know, when I got into the more adult stuff, so that would have been in the 70s and 80s. You know, I subscribed to heavy metal. I really liked Bilal,
sure,
Richard Corbin, Mobius. Those guys, I really enjoyed their stuff.
That's fantastic. You know, you're a world traveler. Did you ever have a chance to meet some of the classic comic book writers or artists?
No, but I didn't. I met Stan Lee.
That's cool. That counts.
Cooler than everything, man. I was sat next to him on the plane, flying cross country, and midway through, you know, we struck up a conversation. It's Stan Lee, and oh my God, you know, I told him about all the comic books I'd read. He was thrilled. Nice guy.
That's fantastic. You know, back to the Holmes world. Based on some of these interviews I heard, you grew up like I did on the Basil Rathbone, Nigel Bruce movies. I'm guessing on television.
Yeah. On Saturdays, me and my boys at somebody's TV. You know, whoever's mother would tolerate us, we'd watch it and made sure we didn't mess up the furniture and stuff.
Are you watching any of the current adaptations of Holmes, or given that you're writing in this world, are you kind of like, I know Max Brooks and Robert Kirkman kind of avoided each other in the zombie world because they didn't want to steal each other's ideas? But are you watching any of like Sherlock or Elementary or that stuff?
Yeah, I both of them, and I thought that they're both really well portrayed. Those guys really understand Sherlock, and you know, in their portrait of him.
Sure.
Wonderful stuff, and you know, great adaptations of that mindset to the 21st century. Thought that was remarkable.
You know, yeah. I'll confess that Elementary, because they made Watson a woman, it kind of bummed me out. I think Lucy Liu's a fine actor, and I think Johnny Lee Miller is a fine actor. But, you know, I always felt like Holmes and Watson really was this, like, bromance. You know, two men who really did love each other and, you know, just admired the hell out of each other.
Yeah. That's the classic take on it. So, you know, when you get away from that, it's different, but they really understand who Holmes is.
Okay.
And really, you know, make it believable.
I hear you, man. That's cool. I also want to know, I saw your panel at Comic-Con last year in San Diego, and had you been to Comic-Con before? Are you a guy that have you ever gone to any of these comic conventions?
I'd gone one time previous to that.
What do you think? Is it fun, or is it too crazy or too much?
Well, I mean, everybody else, they can go to Las Vegas and that crazy. Why can't, you know, comic book fans go someplace and that crazy?
Absolutely.
Yeah, all everybody's like living their fantasy, amongst a whole lot of other aliens.
Are there other, like, sci-fi things that you're into? Are you a Star Trek guy? Are you a Star Wars guy? Both?
I watched Star Trek a little bit, but I was going to college at that time, and just studying.
Busy.
Kind of made it impossible. It was either Star Trek or get an F, and I wasn't going to do that.
I hear you. No, I understand. You were busy, and man, I'll tell you, it was fun as a kid watching your college career and also your pro career. And one of my first scholastic biographies was you. And it was a pleasure to read. And I also thought, really, last year or 2 years ago, that HBO documentary did an incredible job. I thought.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Were you pleased?
Yeah, I absolutely.
Did and congratulations on the book about you and Coach Wooden. I'm really looking forward to reading that. That's going to be some good wintertime reading for me. I know it came out in the spring, but a really nice part of the documentary was this incredible relationship you had with John Wooden.
Yeah, it was not a whole lot of stuff that I wanted to go public with because it was so personal, and private. That's how I felt about it. It's something that I wanted to protect, but I was convinced that, I needed to share it, and, I'm glad I did it.
Well, you're incredibly prolific. 12 books, is that right? 12 now?
Yeah.
And, and now the comic as well. What's compelling you to write at this stage in your life?
Well, just being an avid reader my whole life, most people like us think that we have a great book in us,
Sure.
So I gave it a shot, and I managed to do pretty well. I stuck to what I knew. My first book was a history book, one that I absolutely felt needed to be written, and it did well. So, that encouraged me, and I've stuck with it.
What was that first history book? What part of history was it about?
It's an overview of Black history, and I kind of focus on the U.S., but just to explain Black history.
Have you, as far as the geek culture, have you gone back and looked at some of the great Black comic creators like Matt Baker from the 40s and 50s, and Ron Moore? A great 70s, Marvel artist, and certainly Dwayne McDuffie, a more recent example, the late great Dwayne McDuffie, Dennis Cowan, people like that.
No, I'm not familiar with them, and it's too bad because in all probability I've seen their stuff, but I can't identify them as Black cartoonists. Just admired the quality of their art.
I think, and tell me if I'm wrong, because honestly, you obviously had a different life experience than I did, and also maybe I'm a generation behind you. I'm in my early 50s, but I wonder, as kids that grew up during the space age, I think it really opened up our imaginations to a lot of possibilities. And as someone that's slightly older, I wonder how you felt about that.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about because I can remember when Sputnik went up.
There you go.
And that was like a big deal. All the people that had listened to Tom Corbett, Space Cadet, on
I know what you mean.
one step closer.
Right. Well, and also, and forgive me, but I wonder if you felt the same way. I know that the laws of science don't work this way, but I thought for sure by the 21st century we'd all have jetpacks. And we'd all be cruising around in jetpacks because it really seemed like in the 60s they were really close. I mean, you'd see them at half times. I don't know if they did it in college basketball or the NBA, but I certainly saw it in college football and pro football.
They have jetpacks now that work.
Well, but I'm saying that we'd all own them. And we'd all be flying around like the Jetsons in our jetpacks.
What come through with was the flying car, man. Come on. That's the one.
That's true. It is cooler. That's fantastic. What did you, again, when they really started in the 60s having more Black characters and stuff, was that great, or was that, okay, here's another superhero?
It was everything was fraught with so much, passion about it. It shouldn't be abnormal, but it was, and it was, geez, what is this?
Sure.
And it was kind of that kind of thing.
I hear you. Back to the graphic novel. I love the art. Did you have supervising, kind of power to say, yeah, let's go with this team as far as the art team?
Well, yeah, we had some, but we wanted to let the guys do their thing. They didn't tell us how to write the story, so I'm not going to tell them how to interpret it visually, as long as they stick to the story. And they did a great job. They sure did.
It's very clear storytelling, I think, and
very very clear, and they got it done the right way. I'm thrilled with him, and the colorist. He did a great job.
Absolutely, that's great. Are you reading any current comics these days?
Well, I found out that Heavy Metal has started to publish again.
Yep.
And I've gotten I got my hands on a few recent copies of it just yesterday, and it was great.
That's cool.
So, yeah, and they've done some nice reproductions of the comics from the 30s and 40s and 50s.
Yeah. Oh, really? And so, are you reading those? Are you reading any of those, like the comic strip, collections and things like that?
Yeah, like Phantom. They had a nice Phantom one. I used to read that and Mandrake on Sundays.
Sure, absolutely, man.
I'd keep up with what was happening with Mandrake.
And Prince Valiant, as you said earlier, too. That's I'm kind of bummed that, they do still, newspaper comics do exist, and in fact, you can even subscribe to them digitally and get them delivered daily and stuff from things like King Features Syndicate. But, there really was some magic there, and also, they weren't written for 10-year-olds. I mean, adults were following Steve Canyon and Mandrake and the Phantom and all that.
Exactly. And I remember a good friend of mine in Chicago, he had flown in the Korean War. And so I just, I'm thinking like 15 years ago, I was in a store and I ran across a copy of Smiling Jack. And I jumped on it and got it and I sent it to him because that was his nickname.
Wow.
Smiling Jack Childers. And I sent Jack a compilation of several episodes of Smiling Jack that every Sunday in the comics. He was very thankful.
Understood, man. And I think a few decades ago they were kind of reprinting comics, but it seems like some of these companies now are doing it a lot more, and I'm glad. One like that, like Smiling Jack and Steve Canyon, Johnny Hazard is one that I kind of rediscovered. Frank Robbins' adventure strip.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Oh, that's cool. He ended up doing Marvel work in the 70s, and he was doing The Invaders, doing Captain America stories from World War II.
Wow. Because those guys were like World War II addicts, man. And what was the Terry and the Pirates?
Absolutely, and that Kniff's before he did Steve Canyon, that was his first strip. Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Good stuff. You mentioned Chicago. I'm based in Chicago. And a good friend of mine was your old play-by-play guy for the Bucks, Chet Kopic.
Oh, yeah, Chet. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I come from sports radio. It's comics are my passion, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I started the podcast was to give these guys their due. They're as I'm sure as an admirer of comic books and graphic novels, I think these guys are coming up with incredible ideas and deserve the same kind of platform as filmmakers and great, TV screenwriters and the like, and novelists, certainly.
And they come up with these alternate universes that people can get into, and they become part of popular culture. It's great.
And I'm really glad that you're writing your essays. I really appreciate it. Wasn't it in the Hollywood Reporter where you kind of sat yourself down and watched 3 days of Fox TV?
Oh, yeah. But, sometimes that turns into a blur,
I give you the credit for being able to, get through 3 days like that. That's pretty tough, man.
Yeah, not something I want to be doing all the time.
I understand. Hey, were there other athletes that liked comics? When you were getting heavy metal in the 70s, were there other, Lakers or Bucks that enjoyed reading comics that you were aware of?
Not that I was aware of.
Oh, so it was kind of your secret, did you feel like you had to kind of be like, all right, I don't want anyone catching me reading this stuff, man?
Well, it's just that, that was work. I didn't bring the stuff I did at home to work.
I understand.
Or get upset that, the other guys weren't into it, because it's an acquired taste, definitely.
That's great, man. Are you aware of any of the, again, because, one of the reasons why I mentioned the Hollywood Reporter piece is you're obviously willing to be on the front line of the current culture wars. And I'm wondering, are you aware of some of the stuff that was happening in the geek community? We're kind of having the same debate involving comics as they are in terms of, the current American society and even, obviously, the political game as well. Are you aware of what's happening in the geek community as far as that goes?
No, I didn't know there were any ongoing, controversies or anything. What's happening?
Well, I think the people in the LGBTQ community, they want more representation, not only in terms of characters, but in terms of creators, writers, and artists as well. And then the right is complaining that a lot of the current writers, especially at DC and Marvel, they're saying that they're social justice warriors in terms of creating more female characters, more characters of color, more characters of different orientation. And they're like, hey, I just want my, straight up Iron Man, Spider-Man stories, and don't put the politics in it.
Well, yeah, I think there's room for everybody. I mean, that's what we have to come to understand. There's no need to be fighting over all of this. There is room for everybody to have their say and have their moment and their little niche. There's nothing wrong with that.
I'm in agreement with you, sir. What have you had a chance to watch the films and the new TV shows? I'm interested. I personally, I think Marvel is, with the Netflix shows, they're killing it, and I wonder what your thoughts were.
Yeah, Marvel's been pretty good, and on the big screen, the Alien series has. I'm getting annoyed though.
Why are you getting annoyed?
Because they won't explain it. Where these things came from and why. The very first one, or the first two rather, you get an idea that the company that sent these mining ships out there knew what was happening and wanted to get nobody explains anything. There's been 5 or 6 movies, and I don't know, Sigourney Weaver is transformed into who knows what.
I don't disagree with you, man. That's awesome.
And then, on the what was it, Prometheus? Mm-hmm. Right at the beginning, I'm like, oh, they're gonna, because it had seen, and then no, it's just, well, now what is it?
That's fantastic. We need you in the idea room, man. You gotta correct the writers' room, and no, man, you gotta go a different way. Did you feel that way back in the 80s? When 2010 came out? It was just on Turner Classic Movies this week. And I have to say, I do like that movie a lot, but it really is kind of a simplistic answer to the Rubik's Cube question that Stanley Kubrick asked of us back in, the 60s.
Well, at least as an initial explanation of that particular happening. I thought it was well done. I thought they needed some follow up by the writers to explain how that developed into some kind of story that we could get our teeth into, because it was intriguing what happened.
Agreed. No, and I hope they eventually will do the third book that Clark made, where somebody unfreezes Frank Poole in 3001. And I remember that coming out about 20 years ago or so.
Yeah, that would be interesting, wouldn't it?
I know you're a big a jazz fan, which I really admire as well. And truly, back in the day, and forgive me for bringing up a bad memory, but when your house burned down and your jazz collection burnt up, seriously, man, I'm like, oh, that's horrible. I mean, obviously the tragedy in itself of the house, but to also lose that incredible jazz collection, really, man, that's just heartbreaking.
At least it was fate. It wasn't like, an old girlfriend came and destroyed it or something like that. It was fate, and no one got hurt. I could with it. And everything has been re-released by now on CD.
That's true. Are you now, as someone who really did grow up such a jazz purist and stuff, where are you on the vinyl versus CD debate?
This CD is so much more accessible, and I like the fidelity You know, I don't.
Sure.
You know, you play a vinyl. It sounds like somebody's frying an egg.
You know, that's interesting though, because sometimes the string instruments sound a little purer, and even some, I don't know, man. I understand what you're saying, and maybe depending on the level of recording, and especially the 40s before really multi-track recording started happening and stuff. No, I get that. Are you also a jazz fan in terms of, even if fidelity isn't good, where you find like a 1939 Billie Holiday performance, and you're like, oh, that's fantastic, and do you get excited as far as that kind of historical live recording versus the beautiful stereo of a studio?
Well, I really have enjoyed the way they've re-engineered some of those old recordings and gotten so much more out of them. There was one that was a Carnegie Hall performance by Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie.
Wow.
And they just found it, only like about 10 or 15 years ago, and they re-engineered it for today's sound and put it on a CD, and it's incredible.
That's awesome, man. Sarah Vaughan and Dizzy Gillespie, I got to see them live before they passed, and I was very pleased to have those experiences. Are there any current jazz recordings or anything in your collection that you're willing to recommend to the audience?
Geez, I can recommend a relatively new artist, Robert Glasper.
Okay.
He's a pianist. He's awesome. There's a vibe player, Warren Wolf. I
love the vibes. That's fantastic.
Yeah, check out Warren Wolf. You'll really like him. And we just lost Bobby Hutcherson. That was tough on me.
I hear you, man. No, and what does Glasperger play?
Robert Glasper.
Or Glasper.
He's a pianist.
Oh, he is a pianist. That's fantastic. All right, cool. Because I'm an Oscar Peterson guy, and certainly Monk.
You'll love Robert Glasper. He's incredible.
That's awesome. Well,
and he really respects the tradition.
That's fantastic. And isn't it interesting? It's really hard to find. I don't know where you live, if there's a good jazz station to kind of keep us abreast of what's going on. In Chicago, it's really hard. And frankly, I watch the jazz channels on my cable system to kind of find out, newer artists and what's going on and newer bands.
Go online. You can get WBGO out of New York. That's WBGO out of New York, and you get K-Jazz out of L.A. here. We have a great jazz station.
That's awesome, and it's shameful. Well, at least Chicago's still representing as far as the blues go. We've got some good blues shows still in Chicago, so we're
right. And just the whole live blues performance thing is still happening in Chicago, and I really think that's what keeps it alive. I'm happy that's going on.
That's great, man. No, and I agree. And we just had our Jazz Fest at the beginning of September and stuff. So I agree with you. No, that's good. Like I said, I kind of wish that radio would still represent, especially being a radio guy myself. But what are you going to do? But that's good. You gave us two good streaming jazz recommendations, so that's excellent. Well, I don't want to keep you, sir. You've been gracious with your time, and congratulations on the wonderful Mycroft Holmes work you're doing. I hope more stories are coming in the future.
And continued success to you, and thanks for all your helping me promote the Apocalypse Handbook. I'm really thankful of that.
Oh, it's our pleasure, Kareem. No, it's a great graphic novel, and I'm really glad you're doing both prose and graphic novels to explore Mycroft Holmes. And further, thanks for still being on the front lines, man, because we need people like you that have the perspective of the social changes that have gone on in the past and they're going on right now. And it's great to have your perspective and influence on what's happening.
Well, I'm happy to share, and, thanks for listening.
Man, what a thrill for a guy that grew up watching Kareem Abdul-Jabbar play basketball and be an important part of the conversation, the social conversation of the last few decades. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, thank you to Titan Publishing and Kareem's people as well for you agreeing to the interview. I hope Kareem had a good time. Sounded like he did. I heard him laughing a few times. And, hoping that it was a fun trip down memory lane and also what's going on today with this very amazing person. Hope you enjoyed today's Word Balloon. I sure as hell did myself. It was again brought to you by the League of Word Balloon listeners. Thank you very much, League, for your support. I will be at New York Comic Con And I look forward to seeing you there if you're a listener and enjoying the show and plan on attending the great con that'll be happening from Thursday through Sunday. And I'll be there most days. I may or may not be there on Sunday, but I'm certainly going to be there Thursday through Saturday. So give me the chance to thank you personally for listening to Word Balloon and supporting Word Balloon if you are a League of Word Balloon listener and subscriber. You can do that by going to patreon.com/wordballoon and clicking on the page. And if you think Word Balloon is worth the price of a comic each month, that would be great. I can't thank the 250 strong League of Word Balloon listeners for their continued support in making Word Balloon what it is. It's also brought to you by InStock Trades at InStockTrades.com, where, again, you can get this wonderful book, Mycroft Holmes and the Apocalypse Handbook. It's 25% off there and just $12.74. That's 25% off the retail price of $16.99. Great book, great value. If your store's already ordered it, grab it there. But InStock Trades does have it for you at 25% off. There's a lot more great books that are available now at InStockTrades.com. We've talked a bit about them this week. One in particular that I really love, a really fun action story from Kyle Starks and Chris Schweitzer, and that's Rock Candy Mountain. I am a newbie when it comes to the work of Kyle Starks, but I think he's hilarious. It's so much fun. This is... meet the unbeatable hobo Jackson on his quest to find the mythical hobo heaven. You can meet his sidekick Pomona Slim, but also watch out for the devil and the FBI and the hobo mafia too. Almost an American 180 from what Kareem's doing with Mycroft Holmes, but this is steampunk of a different kind. Rock Candy Mountain is just, let's see here, 50% off. It's only $4.99 at InStockTrades.com. You can get The Punisher by Garth Ennis Omnibus, the hardcover, a new printing. Garth Ennis, so many great artists involved with this. A great Tim Bradstreet, not only cover, but also some Tim Bradstreet interiors as well. 42% off. It's just $58 at InStock Trades. There's a whole lot more, too. We mentioned some of the other great Titan books you can get at InStockTrades.com, like Simon and Kirby's hardcover science fiction. This collection features a lot of their Golden Age science fiction stories. When you think about it, in some ways, these are the building blocks to what came with Challenges of the Unknown and Fantastic Four and so many other great science fiction ideas that Kirby had on his own. We'll reach back now and check out his work with Joe Simon as well. Sometimes writing, always helping, collaborating on the art choice. I always say the Simon and Kirby art has an energy and style all of its own. You can't miss that Kirby energy. But Joe Simon's finishes really makes it a different looking product in the best possible way. Well, that book is 25% off, $37.46. Or you can get Monster Massacre, that features a lot of work from Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. And that's 25% off, just $17.24. All available to you now at InStockTrades.com. Thanks again for listening to Word Balloon. More great stuff coming. We've just started in October with not only this episode, but Dirk Wood at IDW has an amazing volume coming out called The Full Bleed. And if you like the McSweeney anthologies of writers and collections of essays and stories, that's kind of the vein that Dirk is going for in Full Bleed. Wonderful essays, wonderful articles, interviews, comics, can't forget about the comics, but all in this incredible package. An Alan Moore interview, Shelley Bond talking to Gerard Way of My Chemical Romance and DC's Young Animal, a look at Douglas Adams by the showrunner of Dirk Gently, the BBC America series. I wonder if Kareem watches Dirk Gently. But it's really a great collection, and Dirk is a really smart guy. And we have a really fun, involved conversation, not only about this project, but also his view on the comic market today. He's been a marketing director for IDW and before that Dark Horse for so many years and a big part of the comic book business. And I always appreciate his point of view, and I think he's got a great sense of humor, too. Dirk Wood, on the other release that came out today from Word Balloon, I encourage you to check it out and hope you enjoyed as much as you enjoyed today's episode, or even more. Who knows? Maybe you didn't like today's episode. I sure did. Until next time, thanks very much for listening. Word Balloon is a copyright feature of Shaky Productions, copyright 2017.